friends, in the last class we have seen the importance of interdisciplinary approach towards learning, how more and more the need has been felt to break the boundaries of discipline and to create more different knowledge than before. In today's class, let us see how innovation can be brought about by bringing art, science and technology together. So, science and technology, these two terms are more often than not talked together as if they are interchangeable, but they have subtle differences. Let us see what are the differences are. In general words, science is the exploration of knowledge of the natural environment, whereas technology is using this knowledge for having making innovations in and bettering human life. So, these are the subtle differences between science and technology. Let us see what they are. Definition: science, a methodological means of acquiring new knowledge on specific subjects through observation and experiment. So, the science entails finding new kind of knowledge, why we see rainbow, why the colors of the leaves are green, or why the sky appears blue. This is having a methodological approach to explore new knowledge, to understand things around us. Whereas technology, the practical application of knowledge derived by science for specific purpose. So, technology is when you use this knowledge for specific purpose. More often than not, it is to make human life better or human life more comfortable than before. So, technology entails that we use the scientific knowledge to apply it for our day to day needs and necessities. Purpose: to discover knowledge. The purpose of science is to discover knowledge, determine causes of phenomena and make prediction. So, the purpose of science is to explore and to find new knowledge that we did not know before. Okay, so, something that we had not known in the past, science tries to explore that knowledge and discover this new knowledge. This is one purpose of science, is to discover new knowledge. Determine causes of phenomena and make prediction, why something is how it is, like why water flows, why there is air, why why the air flows in a certain direction, or why chemical react in certain way. So, these are the questions that science asks, why certain phenomena occurs. So, this is one purpose of science, is to understand or to explain why certain phenomena in the nature happens, and also to make predictions. So, after you discover this knowledge, you make predictions that if you bring two atoms together, this kind of reactions might happen. So, these are the predictions science tends to make. Whereas, the purpose of technology is to solve problems and dilemmas, improve productivity, increase efficiency and effectivity, to implement changes. So, the purpose of technology is rather practical. It is to solve problems and dilemmas, it is to give some answers to some questions, like having a magnifying glass, for example. It is to make our life better, to see smaller objects better. We have discovered magnifying glass. So, the science behind the magnifying glass tells us that certain kinds of glass will make an object look bigger, whereas the technology is applied to make the magnifying glass itself. Increase efficiency and effectivity to implement changes. So, these are the different purposes of science and technology. Motto: the motto of science is knowing, the motto of technology is doing. Whereas science it stops at understanding a phenomena, it stops at explaining a phenomena. Technology takes it a little forward, it uses this knowledge to make something else. It is it is very practical kind of application, where you use the knowledge to make something. It is in the doing, you do something with the knowledge you have. Reaction to change: so, science laws proven by science is absolute, whereas technology is prone to change. So, you very rarely you see that theories in science are changed. It is the theories that had been discovered in the past have remained same in science, because they have been a proven phenomena. They have very less scope of change, whereas technology can update itself time to time. It can keep on having new innovations, and it can keep on updating itself. So, technology is prone to change. Focus. The focus of science is discovery and understanding, whereas the technology, the focus is invention and application. That we have discussed earlier also, that science discovers and understands, whereas technology uses this discovery for invention of new techniques, or new instruments, etc. Function of science is making predictions and understanding phenomena. This is what science does. It tries to understand a phenomenon and make prediction, whereas the function of technology is make work easier, solve problems, fulfill needs. So, as I said before, that technology is used to better life, either of human being or environment sometimes, or other organisms, but more and more it is used to better the life of human beings. So, that is the function of technology, to make work easier, solve problems, fulfill needs, etc. Methods of evaluation, it is analysis, deduction, developing theories. So, in science, what is the method? The method is like you observe something, then you analyze your observation, then you deduct, make a deduction. Deduction means to arrive at certain conclusion looking at the observation, and after analysis you deduct something out of your observation and analysis, then make a grand theory out of it. So, you say if you are observing why organism behaves in a certain way as it behaves, you observe it for a certain time, you analyze its behavior, then you say that in this condition this organism will behave in this way. So, this is what science does. It observes, analyzes, deducts, then it creates grand theory. Whereas in technology, it is analysis, planning, synthesizing, design. You analyze a problem, you plan how to resolve it, you then synthesize, design, you make a design to innovate, to make something out of it. Development, in science it is discovery with support and control through experiment, and as we have discussed earlier, that science focuses on discovery, and it uses experiment for making this discovery. Technology development is done through design, invention, production, implementation. So, in technology, the development of technology occurs through design, inventions, production, and implementation. So, their process is a little different than science. It keeps on designing things, it makes inventions, it production and implementation of this designs are the way it develops forward. The required skills for science is experimental, analytical, and logical skills. So, a person has to have this kind of skills or tools, experimental mindset, analytical and logical skills the person should have, the one who is practicing science, and one who is practicing technology, planning, design, construction, problem solving, decision making, quality assurance, and interpersonal skills. So, this a person in the field of technology should possess some of these characteristics. Example branches, for example of what is science is biology, mathematics, geology, human behavior are science, whereas technology is as we have discussed before, that it is applying this knowledge to do something. So, agriculture, applied physics, engineering, biotechnology are branches of technology. So, here technology is more of doing, of practical usage, whereas science is making discovery, making new discovering new kinds of knowledge. So, now we have a fair idea of what science and technology is. So, now let us see how this seemingly distant field of knowledge, science and technology, when it comes together, when it comes near to art, what kind of responses it brings about. So, Albert Einstein had said that the most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and science. So, Einstein had said that everything beautiful is mysterious, and it is true for art and science. So, there is no difference in essence. Both science and art are beautiful in them because they are mysterious. So, this was the previous one was an example from a person who is well known in the field of science, and this is an example of a person who is well known in the field of art, Leonardo da Vinci. And he said that study the science of art, study the art of science, develop your senses, learn how to use, realize that everything connects to everything else. So, even Leonardo da Vinci was of the opinion that there is no intrinsic or there is no essential difference between science and art. They are they have certain common factors. He also feels that even science and art are equally important, and you should be knowing both of them. So, people from both science and art feel the importance or feel the necessity to know the other or to appreciate the other. This is one very unique characteristics, that though we think that science and technology is much different from arts, but people practicing it, the reputed people who practice it, often feel that there is a unifying element between science and technology and art. So, here there are two examples by Einstein and Leonardo da Vinci, who says that science and art are equally important and are equally beautiful. So, we have discussed this in one of our previous classes, that C.P. Snow was one of the first person who pointed out, who actually lamented that the intellectual world is divided into two, whereas the artists are in one corner, the technological people or the science people are in the other corner, and though they hardly interact with one another. In a lecture delivered on May 7, 1959 at the Senate House in Cambridge, Charles Percy Snow argued that science and the humanities were evolving into two distinct cultures. Snow was a novelist and physical chemist that dabbled in both art and science. So, he himself was a person who was a practitioner of both science and humanities. He saw this separation as a major obstacle to the progression of human society. He felt that this division or this chasm between the science and technology and art and humanities, this chasm is creating a lot of problem in human society, because people practicing these two fields do not or hardly they talk to each other, or hardly they exchange between each other. He was concerned with scientists who shy away from reading literature and artists who ignore the scientific method. He was deeply pained or deeply worried about why these two sets of people or intellectual people do not have anything in common. They do not like to engage with one another's work. If this became the norm, Snow saw us losing bridges that helped these two cultures converge. So, he very famously had coined this word two cultures, saying that the humanities and art is one culture, and whereas the science and technology is another culture. So, these two cultures hardly talk with each other. Snow thought that the collective human intellect would grow if these bridges survived. So, he said that collective human intellect, or the intellect of the humankind would grow, would survive only if these two worlds come together to have a meaningful dialogue. This was the relationship between art and science as pictured by Snow 60 years ago. So, this was something that he had talked about 60 years ago in 1959. The debates are still going on, that why people from both the fields do not talk to each other, or why these two fields, two sets of discipline do not talk to each other. So, one of the strong view is that science and technology are rational, whereas art is either irrational or non-rational. So, this is one of the view very strongly held by certain section of people, a certain section of intellects, that science is a very rational, science and technology are very rational field of inquiry, whereas art and humanities are non-rational or they are irrational. Science and technology aim to capture truth, while art is content with appearance. Science and technology are guided by detached objective procedures, while art is guided by subjectivity and intuition. So, these are some of the differences or detachment that people have pointed out, that science and technology are very objective, whereas art and humanities are often very subjective. It is often related to the person concerned, the perspective of the person practicing it. Science and technology are commonly viewed as the process of uncovering the deep structures of nature through rational tools. Rational methods require linguistic precision, impartiality and repeatability. This method and approach is unlike art practices. So, there is a sense of condescending attitude that science and technology are often impartial, they are very detached, they are not related to the person concerned who is practicing it, whereas art is a very subjective biased kind of approach art has. So, actual knowledge is actually produced in science and technology fields, and the practitioners of art do not actually produce a very objective kind of knowledge. This is a very strong view which one section of people hold. So, let us see how it has been seen in history. Aldous Huxley in Literature and Science in 1963 explained, for science it is in its totality the ultimate goal is the creation of a monistic system in which on the symbolic level and in terms of the inferred component of invisible and intangible fine structure, the world's enormous multiplicity is reduced to something like unity, and the endless succession of unique events of a great many different kinds gets tied up and simplified into a single rational order. So, Huxley tried to explain that the objective of science or the focus of science is to explain the multiplicity of things that we see in around us, to give one explanation why the science focuses on giving one and the correct explanation of the things we see around them around us. So, I would see something differently, you would see something differently, but what science tend to do is that it gives a one explanation of why we see the things, and science attempts to give the correct and the true definition of why we see things in a certain way. Your and my view wouldn't count, what science explains would be the ultimate truth. This is one of the aim that science attempts, that to give the ultimate answer to the things we see around us. He also states that poets and in general men of letters are permitted, indeed are commanded by the rules of their game to do all the things that scientists are not allowed to do. So, he says that the poets and people who write, the writers, generally the humanists, they are permitted to do things that the scientists are not allowed to. They are allowed to bring their subjective experience or the subjective feelings and emotions, whereas scientists are not allowed to do that. They are supposed to keep their emotions aside and do their research and do their work. There are occasions obviously when it is right for them to be verbally prudent, but there are other occasions when verbal imprudence carried to a pitch, if necessary, of the most extravagant foolhardiness becomes an artistic duty, a kind of categorical imperative. So, he says that okay, there are certain times when the artist or the humanist can speak in a very prudent manner, in a very precise manner, but there are often artist or the humanities, a person practicing humanities is allowed to or has the levy to talk what he feels like, he or she feels like, it's they are allowed to do that in the field they are in. So, this was historically thought to be the difference between a person practicing science and a person practicing humanities and arts. So, we find the following polarities between this in the thoughts that we have mentioned just now. Science is conceptual, dispassionate and critical, whereas science is very critical, dispassionate, objective. Art is non-conceptual, passionate and engaged, and art is very passionate. One brings about his or her emotions and feelings into it, and so it is very passionate and engaged. It is supposed to be engaging with the people they are trying to convey the message. Science, unlike art, requires rationality. Art demands the union of ego and objective. So, science requires rationality according to this view, and whereas art and humanities can unite ego and objective, ego of the person who is practicing, and and the object that the person is researching on. So, he can bring his own opinions on the object he or she is researching on. Science demands the separation of self and object and results in work that depicts objects abstractly as radically separate from the human and the natural. So, science demands that you keep your emotions and your feelings and opinions aside and understand the object as it is, understand it, understand your object of inquiry in a very objective manner, in a very dispassionate manner. But there are also other views which says that this polarity might not be true. There is a certain essential similarity between the arts and science and technology. So, there are two actually monoist views that has been talked about in the past. Let us discuss them. Cognitive monoism treats art as a subdivision of science. Aesthetic monoism treats science as a subdivision of art. So, here we see that there are two views, one is cognitive monoism and other is aesthetic monoism. So, cognitive monoism sees art as a subdivision of science, whereas aesthetic monoism sees science as a subdivision of art. The first considers art as a means to attain truth through rational or cognitive method. The second considers science as intuitive method for seeking harmony or order. So, these two views actually tries to subsume the other within its fold. According to both types of monoism, the error in viewing art and science as polar opposite is in assuming that the difference between art and science are essential rather than simply difference of degree. So, the essential similarity between these two views is that the difference between art and science and technology is in the degree. It is not that they are essentially or intrinsically different. So, a science and science, technology, art are in the same plane, whereas only what they differ is in the degree of their outlook. So, they are not essentially different than one another. So, these are the underlying understanding in the monoistic views. So, let us discuss both of them one by one. Cognitive monoism. Cognitivist monoism view art as different from science only in the degree of its precision and universality. So, cognitive monoism says that science is precise, but art is also precise, only what they differ is that in their degree of the precision. Art expresses universal concepts through particulars, therefore, art imprecisely and ambiguously express truth. So, because art tries to unravel or tries to explain universal concepts through particulars, through examples. Therefore, it might appear to be imprecise or it might appear to be ambiguous while expressing truth. The problem is how much the ambiguous symbolism of art prevents it from expressing scientific truth. So, how much of the particularism might come into play. So, it might appear to be imprecise or it might appears to be ambiguous. Critics of the cognitive view argue that at best art can express non-scientific truth because its ambiguous symbolism allows it to reach truth unavailable through the literal symbols of science. So, there are critics of the cognitive view who says that art can also be a tool for expressing the truth, but a tool of precision, but the methods used in art are not well enough to be explaining the universal truth. So, this is one critique against the cognitive monoism. Art uses symbol or signs to represent truth. The symbols or signs may be natural or cultural. So, art uses symbols of truth, symbols that to express truth, but these symbols can be natural or cultural. In either case, art expresses or represents truth in a manner that differs from science. So, in either case, art also explains the things around us, around in the world, but it uses symbols that are much different from what science uses. But this difference is secondary to the features that art and science share. Both art and science aim to convey truth or express knowledge. According to Nelson Goodman, this subsumption of aesthetic under cognitive excellence calls for one more reminder that cognitive, while contrasted both with the practical and passive, does not exclude the sensory or emotive that we know through art is felt in our bones and nerves and muscles as well as grasped in our mind. So, Nelson Goodman tries to explain this cognitive monoism in the way that it says that art might also try to explain the truth around in the universe, but it cannot do away with the emotive part of it. Art has to be emotive, art has to express feelings. Aesthetic monoism. According to aesthetic monoism, the scientist is an artist in its own manner. Science. So, this is the view which holds that science is part of art. Science is a subdivision of art. Science, like art, is irrational. So, this view holds that science is also irrational like art. Though science appears to be cool and rational and scientists profess to be objective and detached, in reality scientists are passionate. Though it is said that to assume that scientists are dispassionate is wrong. Scientists are also passionate. Scientists also cannot do away with their emotions. Theories are accepted or rejected according to aesthetic standards of simplicity and unity. So, theories are also not they are not also safe from critical analysis. They are also accepted or rejected at times because of the simplicity of the expression or the standards, the way in which they are represented. Theories are discovered and proposed according to irrational beliefs and visions. Science is not thus the Simon Prior crystal clear fount of all reliable knowledge and coherence. Its method is not that of detachment, but rather of involvement. It rests no less than our other way of achieving meaning upon various commitments which we personally share. So, this was written by Polanyi and Porsche in the book Meanings. Where art and science differ according to aesthetic monoism is in subject matter. So, art and science are not different in radically different, but what they differ is the subject matter they are looking at. Science gives truth about nature, art gives truth about the meaning of life. So, what the point where they differ is the matter they are looking at. Science, whereas science gives you truth about nature, and art tries to give you truth about life. So, this is where they differ, otherwise there is not much difference between the two. So, these are the two views about monoistic views about science, technology and art. Art and science are functionally interdependent. Art and science interact through their functional interdependence. Art is present as creative imagination in science. Science provides reality testing or rationality for art. Although the function of art is to produce imaginary worlds and the function of science is to test theories for contact and reality, these functions are interdependent. Science prompts art to create new vision, art provides science with vision for articulating and testing. So, more and more it has been felt that science and art are not opposite to each other, but they are functionally interdependent. There are elements of art in science, there are elements of science in art. So, this is more and more people are feeling that they should not be looked at as two divergent area of knowledge, but they have functionality, and they are dependent on each other. A scientific approach should also take into account artistic approach, and an artistic approach should also take into account scientific vision. According to Karl Popper's view of scientific discovery, new theories are discovered through creative acts of intuition. So, Karl Popper used to thought that new theories can be only discovered when you have a very acute, a very sharp intuition. There is no logic of or rationality in discovery, only in testing or criticism. The logic of testing helps us determine whether our creative insights have any bearing on reality. So, there has to be a intuition about what we are trying to study. Creative insight provides theories for testing. Thus, in science, rationality and imagination are functional interrelated. Rationality plays a destructive or critical role. It examines the product of our imagination and may destroy them by finding them fall short of reality. So, this is what Karl Popper used to hold. Imagination or creative intuition plays a constructive role. It presents novel ideas about reality as possible solution to the problems of science. So, this is what Karl Popper holds, that intuition and imagination holds positive role in scientific discovery. This view of imagination and rationality interacting within science can be applied to analyze the way art and science interact with each other. So, this is the question about imagination and rationality can be looked at from the point of view how science and art interact with each other. So, now let us discuss a bit about Karl Popper's view on imagination and rationality in science. Following Popper's view, rationality has a destructive role in science, while imagination has a creative role. Imagination provides tentative solution to problems, rationality destroys mistaken solutions by uncovering errors. In contrast to its role in art, imagination in science is restricted to producing articulate theories or testing. Rationality in science aims to eliminate error and so destroy false theories. The aim of science in the discovery of truth. However, rationality in art points out the weakness of imagination and encourages imagination to create worlds that momentarily defy rational articulation. Apart from its role in articulating the products of imagination as theories and in testing theories, rationality also helps guide scientific practices. Rationality is applied to evaluate scientific practice. We use rationality to set up guidelines for deciding whether it is better to eliminate a false theory or to examine it for an truth before we eliminate it from body of scientific knowledge. So, following Karl Popper's views, we see that rationality and imagination are both important in both art as well as science and technology. They might have a varying degree of usage, but both imagination and rationality is required in science and art. Rationality here, let us now discuss imagination and rationality in art. Rationality plays an indirect role in art. Critics and aestheticians influence the course of art through discussing the nature of art, applying proposed standards of art and evaluating particular works of art. The critical discussion of art guides both the formation of the scientist's ideas and the artist's expectation. Furthermore, though a work of art is not in itself a test of a theory of art, some work of art can be discussed as if they are tests. In short, rationality in art involves a critical appreciation of work of art. This critical appreciation indirectly affects artists both in the projected work and in the completion of the work. Imagination in art has a direct and powerful influence. The artist delineates inarticulate ideas and problems of the imagination. The problems delineated in a work of art are beyond articulation. The delineation of inarticulate ideas merely embed rather than solve the conflicts of problems within the work of art. The work of art is the height of irrationality. Ideas and problems are inchoate, inhibiting their straightforward presentation and intellectual evolution. So, we see that both imagination and rationality are important in varying degree in both science and art, and one should not be distinguishing arts and science and technology based on saying that one is purely imagination and one is purely rational. Both rationality and imagination are required in both this field of knowledge. So, now let us see some historical connections between art and science and technology. Prehistoric cave painting represent what may be the first merging of art and science in the many centuries since the relationship has developed. Science historian Alistair C. Crombie, Trinity College, Oxford, UK, traces the connections between art and science in the modern world. Writing in 1986 issue of the journal devoted entirely to art and science, Crombie discusses the influence of ancient Greece and its moral and intellectual commitments. This included a mathematical and causal structured science of nature, a morally structured drama, and painting and music, each structured to make their aesthetic or drama effects. The rational tradition that was manifested in Greek science and art continued into the Renaissance in a style that Crombie refers to as experimental control postulation. The Renaissance gave us much of the notable figures in the history of art and science, most notably Leonardo da Vinci. His embracing art, architecture, philosophy, astronomy, engineering, and a variety of other physical and natural sciences provide powerful evidence of the breadth of Leonardo's interest and achievements. So, we see that historically there has been not much difference between people practicing art and people practicing science and technology. We have seen during the Renaissance time Leonardo da Vinci, who was a proficient practitioner of art, architecture, engineering, etc. His efforts as an artist were informed by extensive self training in science, including dissection of human bodies. As historian notes, Leonardo believed that it was necessary to master the body's depth to accurately portray its surface. So, Leonardo used to dissect human body to understand how it functions, so that to project its beauty. So, he was both looking at the anatomy of a human body and as well as explaining projecting the feelings and emotions. Such anatomical drawings as principal organs and arterial systems of the female body are remarkable not only for their artistic technique and composition, but for the precision and accuracy in recording the structure of the human body. Another man of the Renaissance whose career combined achievements in art and science was Galileo. As Crombie notes, Galileo lived from Michelangelo's death to Isaac Newton's birth, thus marking the transition between two great European intellectual movements, from the world of the rational constructive artist to that of the rational experimental scientist. So, Galileo was fortunate enough to live during Michelangelo's death, from Michelangelo's death to Isaac Newton's birth. So, he has seen both the movement, the rational constructive from the world of the rational constructive artist to the rational experimental scientist. Trained in music and in perspective drawing, Galileo also possessed expertise in mathematics, physics, and astronomy. As science historian Stillman Drake notes in the book Art, Science and History in the Renaissance, it was not uncommon for men of the time to be versed in those three separate scientific disciplines. So, at that time art, science and technology, history were all supposed to be various fields of inquiry, various fields of knowledge, and there was hardly any difference between art and science. Galileo, however, by applying mathematics to physics and physics to astronomy, was the first to combine these two fields in truly significant way. So, at that time during the Renaissance time, people used to borrow tools from various disciplines to discover newer things of newer meanings of that they saw around them. Modern science and modern art, just as technology, whether in the form of 17th century microscope or more modern developments, changed the way science was done, so did technology change art. So, one influenced the other. It is not that developments were happening in one field and which did not touch the other. When developments happen in science and technology, it automatically influenced the field of art, and when art things were happening in the field of art, it automatically had an influence upon the science and technology. One such technological development was the invention of photography in the early 19th century. Photography provides another means of recording and interpreting the world, an activity, as we noted earlier, that is fundamental to both artist and scientist. Photography, far from remaining an adjunct to painting, was quick to come into its own as an form of art. So, earlier when photography was discovered, it was thought to be a part of sort of a subset of painting, but later on photography was appreciated or acknowledged for its own value. Later developments which have extended the range of human eye even further also lend themselves to artistic consideration. Trillat discusses how images produced by X-ray radiography and electron microscopy relate to abstract painting. So, how we have there have been discovery in radiography, X-ray radiography, and this has in turn influenced abstract painting. So, one development in one field has always influenced or impressed upon the other field. Comparing, for example, a motion field modernist painting of a running girl with an electron microphoto of lid terulide decorated by germs of crystallization. Trillat offers several hypotheses. He poses, for instance, that modern artists have been aware of recent works in physics and have taken inspiration from the images produced by modern devices. So, now what do scientists and artists do? Scientists tend to struggle. So, we will see in this points that both scientists and artists have their own struggles and they have their own focus, and they are also trying to reach somewhere, they are also trying to reach truth, and it is not that their struggles are much different than the other. Scientists tend to struggle more gaining new insight, artists tend to struggle more with the communication. Both often work hard to gain the background and skill that will help them be successful. That is why there are prestigious schools of science and art. Scientists do experiments over and over, trying to pin down some new aspects of reality. Once they have their new understanding, they are pre-arranged traditional modes of communication that make the part easier. So, scientists what they do is they keep on experimenting over and over again until they reach close to reality or close to truth, and after they have reached that point, there are already certain sets of practices by which they are supposed to communicate what the results, what they have discovered. Artists often start with the new vision, then work through periods in which they explore how best to get the message across. So, whereas artists have they have a vision, they have a certain idea and they work on the methods to communicate them at the best. They have shows, they seek feedback to help them understand that what works. So, they try to communicate what is in their mind, what idea do you want to convey, and for this they have different ways of communicating, and this is also sometimes a feedback method, that something works, something does not work, and they keep on working upon it until they reach the point where they are able to communicate their idea perfectly. Artists and scientists often need to invent new concepts and technologies to accomplish their goals. So, artists and scientists both have to keep on working on concepts and technologies to accomplish their goal. Both science and art have useful spin-off. Applied science is technology, applied art is decoration. So, as we have discussed before, science when it attains the field of application, it becomes technology, whereas art when it attains the dimension of application, it becomes decoration. Technology and decoration are application of science and art for practical purposes. technology and decorations make life easier, but they do not change how we fundamentally perceive what is around us. So, both the application of both science and art is to make life easier, but they fundamentally do not change the way how we perceive what is around us. So, what can we infer from what we have discussed so far? We can infer that both science and art are human attempts to understand and describe the world around us. Okay. This is true that both science is also trying to discover truth around us, and art is also trying to discover or to convey the truth around us. The methods have different traditions and subjects might differ. So, whereas science express what they want to express through experiments or by theories, art does by things that we have discussed earlier like paintings, dance, drama, theatre, and so the communication methods might differ, but what are they essentially doing is they are trying to convey truth, and the subjects might differ. So, whereas we have seen that science and technology, they try to look at the world around us, the inanimate objects around us, the non-living things around us mostly. Whereas art is about talking about the human condition, how human live, what are their feelings and emotions, they talk about that. So, in this manner the subject of science and technology and art are different. Scientists such as Anne Bohr, Dirac and Einstein, Heisenberg, Young, all of them have sometime or the other expressed the necessity of aesthetics in their work, have expressed that they have often let their research and results be guided by beauty and aesthetics. So, this is very important. Well known scientists have often said that they let their research be guided by beauty and aesthetics. Dirac said that it is more important to have beauty in one's equation than to have them fit experiment. So, he said that he holds that there should be a beauty in one's equation rather than being a very lifeless experiment. Wien said, my work always tried to unite the truth with the beauty, but when I had to choose one or the other, I usually choose the beautiful. So, he says that my work often tries to combine truth and beauty, but if I have to choose one, I will always choose beauty. And Young expressed the intrinsic elegance and beautiful perfection of the mathematical reasoning involves, and the complexity and depth of the physical consequences are great sources of encouragement, and one learn to hope that nature possesses an order that one may aspire to comprehend. So, scientists, well known scientists, well reputed scientists have always tried to combine beauty and science together. They never saw aesthetics as different from what they are experimenting with, what they are trying to discover. So, these are some of the examples where we have seen very successful bringing together of science and technology and art. This is another one. Let us look at how science and technology has been used. To arouse beauty and aesthetics. So, these are some of the references I have used for this lecture. So, friends, today we have seen how science and technology at one hand and art at another hand has been seen in history. Sometimes they have seen to be radically different than one another, but sometimes people have pointed out that they are not radically different, but what might differ is the difference in their degree. In the they also have both of them have rationality and imagination, but what might differ is the degree of rationality and imagination in each field. So, we end here today. In the next class, we will see some examples of bringing together art along with science and technology. Then from there, we will see how we can use the folk art to with science and technology and what responses they create. Thank you.